A lot of people are furious over this one. A lot of parents in particular. This is a scene that unfolded this weekend in a Dallas suburb. An officer trying to take control of this crowd of teenagers after this fight at a neighborhood pool party. The team's unarmed. One of the questions, was the officer's conduct justified? Joining me to discuss, retired New Jersey Police Detective Lieutenant Steve Rogers. He is also a former member of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. Also here with me, Joshua Dubois, former head of President Obama's Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. So, gentlemen, a pleasure to have both of you on. And Steve, first to you, I think just from an officer perspective, your gut reaction, I mean, was this appropriate of this officer?
Gut reaction, he should have never drawn his weapon. There was no excuse to do that. However, saying that, until the investigation's complete, you got to remember the police responded to a volatile situation, and we don't know the interaction between the young lady and the officer. The kids were told to disperse.
Does it matter? She is a young woman in a bikini, clearly unarmed, and the officer thrust his weight on her back. Just asking.
Yes, it does. It does matter. All right. It matters to disrespect. When a person, whether they're an adult or a child, are asked to disperse by the police, there's a reason for that. Obey the order. He did what he thought he had to do to try to diffuse a situation. We don't know if what she was saying to him.
No,
if
we
she
don't.
Was,
I'm sorry.
causing a bigger problem. But saying that, you asked before, said something before about, would there be a better solution? That's when we talk about community policing.
Joshua, I hear you wanting to jump in. Go ahead, sir.
With all due respect to Lieutenant Rogers, I mean, this young woman, a girl really, 14 years old, had on a bikini and was at a pool party. If any person, any well-trained individual, particularly law enforcement, should be able to have a proportionate response. And there's no one with common sense that can look at the terror in that girl's eyes and also the almost manic nature of this officer's expression and say that that was proportionate. It felt almost like an incident of domestic violence more than a proportional police stop. I mean, it's just absurd that now we're getting into justifying this officer's actions as opposed to looking into the eyes of that girl and imagining if she was our daughter or our sister or our wife. I have to say, as a father-to-be myself and someone who's married to a wonderful woman, if that happened to my wife, you know, there would be no hesitation in my response, and I don't think America should hesitate either,
Brooke,
regardless of the race.
Brooke, I'm a father of 2 daughters, okay, so look, he's a dad. I could understand his situation, but what does an officer do when you're told to leave the scene of an area? What do? We don't know what went on, but let's just say there was resistance there. Does the officer walk away? And if the officer walks away, look at the signal that's sending to everyone else. Well, remember, there was fighting going on.
But there were other officers.
If I may, she did walk away. It's so clear in the video that she was walking away. What he didn't like was what she said to her. And so what you have is an individual who clearly has unresolved issues with power, maybe with women, maybe racial anxiety that he hasn't processed. He went after her.
With all due respect, we don't know that.
Well, we don't know a lot of things. We don't know how this started. We don't know what happened on the other end of the video. I've listened to this thing several times on loop. I'm still trying to make out what exactly she was saying. But here's what I did notice, that there were other officers who responded to this, Steve. And I'm wondering, as an officer, and you almost see one of the other officers almost put his arm on the officer who drew the gun's shoulder. I mean, what's the role of the other officers if your gut is telling you that this officer is overextending, not acting, to use Joshua's word, proportional?
Oh yeah, your obligation is to tell that officer, holster that weapon. Okay, so they were there to, and I'm sure that's what they did. But Brooke, keep in mind, he's wrong with the gun. There's no question. You don't draw a gun on a bunch of kids, okay, or unarmed especially. But I think the situation regarding the video with the young lady, certainly the perception is terrible. But we have to get facts. We have to find out what was said. These officers are outnumbered. There's fights going on. Youngsters are not leaving the scene. It's tough being a cop today. And look, if he's wrong, if the investigation finds out he used excessive force, then he should be punished. However, we have to wait for the facts.
But Brooke, it's not about just this individual officer. This is happening time and time again. I believe there's a systemic issue, unfortunately, with some of the bad guys crowding out all the good cops in this country because they're not processing their own anger issues, their own racial anxiety. There's no way that a pool party should be responded to like this when there aren't weapons involved. These kids were in bikinis.
Let me stay with you, Joshua, because I was texting with a friend who has a teacher friend, predominantly African-American school here in Brooklyn, and these young people are asking very big questions, and he's going to show them this video this week. And to your point about, listen, you took to Twitter and you said, imagine if this was your daughter or even your wife. How should parents, because you say parents, show your kids this video. How should that, what should that discussion look like?
Well, I in addition to having a child on the way myself, I also have much younger siblings. They're teenagers, and I was on the phone with them yesterday just watching the video and processing it with them. First and foremost, I think you have to say that there's nothing wrong with you. You did not, this woman did not deserve what happened to her. Perhaps there could have been a different dialogue with the officer, but when you have knees shoved into your back, and when you have someone yelling and screaming and cursing at you, that's not a proportionate response. Okay, so first, there's nothing wrong with you, but two, then you have to talk about how you can get out of situations safe and whole. And so you walk kids through how to try to diffuse the situation when the officer may be too hot-headed, how to bring down the temperature. And the wonderful thing is the kids standing around the officer, he was more manic than they were. They are actually relatively calm as they are filming this officer who's clearly just sort of losing his mind in that. And it should be okay to say that, even about some police officers in this country. There are great officers, but clearly this guy was in the wrong, and we shouldn't hesitate to say that.
He's on administrative leave. They're investigating. This is still so fresh. So much more needs to come out. Steve Rogers and Joshua Dubois, thank you both so much for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.